Good morning, Grinders. Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. BlenderEd, Blender HD. You want to follow me on Twitter? And it's Monday, September 12th, right after the first Sunday slate, first week one NFL slate. And we're back on Mondays, as usual. Mondays with McCool, joined by James McCool, the co-author with me. Let me pull it up. The Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. First course is a 15-hour audio DFS masterclass, but the second one we just released, Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports for advanced players. It's a 10-chapter audio course with seven plus custom Excel tools for you to use to arrange the numbers well, to use your projections or our projections or any projections to build plus EV lineups. And James, I did just that yesterday. I used all my entire process was built through it was the first NFL slate that I had multiple of your tools up to build all of my lineups. And I did well in cash games.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Well, I mean, if you were playing contrarian yesterday, you probably didn't do very well. It's the first week of the season. We don't know anything. But if you take a look here, I pulled up the results DB of the $100 milli. And if you take a look at the ownership, the top owned players, Pittman, Marquise Brown, Kelsey, McCaffrey, Barkley, and Juju.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, like Marquise Brown, 14 points. Meh. McCaffrey, obviously underperformed, 15.7. Juju, 12. I mean, for 5,000 is like not the end of the world. But Pittman, smash. Kelsey, smash. Barkley, smash.
Yeah.
And if you were building a lot of lineups that didn't have those three players in it, like I was, you're not gonna get there, really.
Well, and Jalen Hurts is the top overall owned quarterback as well.
Oh, yeah, and Jalen Hurts did well. But I mean, quarterback ownership is kind of spread out. But the good part is that on DraftKings, I had Pittman, Kelsey, and Barkley in cash, right? And then I had Barkley on FanDuel. So like on DraftKings, in cash games, I just got over the line. I mean, I squeaked out my 2v2 decision was it was a 3v3, James, on DraftKings. On FanDuel, it was a 2v2. So on FanDuel, I was either going to play Christian Kirk.
Okay.
And let's see, it was Christian Kirk versus I don't know what it was. And either way, I wouldn't have gotten there, but I got the Dolphins defense on FanDuel versus the Commanders. And I played Mixon in over McCaffrey. So basically, I was able to get to Marquise Brown on FanDuel, Marquise Brown and Mixon and the Dolphins with Barkley. And that I did great there. So, I mean, I cashed in quintuple ups and stuff.
Yeah.
So that was great. And DraftKings, I had the worst 3v3 out of my decisions, and I still got over the line. And that's, to me, it's a byproduct of it being week one and there being more dead money in cash games. If this was week 9, week 10, I wouldn't have made it. So the 3v3 for me, in some combination, was in that 5K and 3K wide receiver range and the defense. So it came down to like Christian Kirk or Juju Smith-Schuster.
Sure. Okay.
Randall Cobb or Jahan Dotson.
Okay.
And Commanders or Dolphins defense. The worst combination was Juju, Cobb, Commanders, and that's exactly what I had. And I still got over the line, and I won like 65% of my head-to-heads. But I mean, I could have easily replaced Cobb with Dotson. In a vacuum, if the Packers-Viking game was a 1:00 game, I would have chose Dotson.
That's fair. Okay.
So basically, it was so close, I chose Cobb because it's a 4:25 game, and it gives me more optionality to.
Right.
I could turn that into Romeo Doubs. I could turn. There was a lot of. I could go down to. I could forget Kelsey turn that into Jefferson at some point. I mean, like I was playing a lot of late players anyway, and the same thing happened with Christian Kirk. Like Christian Kirk's in that same early game, so it's like given Juju versus Kirk, I'll just go with the late players and see what happens. And just like I have multiple options. I could get to Marquise Brown. I could not play Marquise Brown. I could switch tight end. I could play Aaron Jones over Barkley and there were tons of swaps there.
Mm-hmm.
Dolphins and Commanders were both playing at the same time at 1:00, so it wouldn't have mattered either way. I'm going to stick with the one that gives me 100 less in salary and also was more owned. So I was always going to play Hurts. I was going to play McCaffrey. I was always going to play Barkley.
Right.
I mean, as far as the 1:00 games, like Barkley wasn't a 1:00 game either. Right.
No,
so it's like a lot of this stuff was later. But that was the cash game type of thing. But in GPPs, like I purposely, what I did, James, and I'll let you talk soon. Don't worry about it. I'm highlighting your tools.
I get it.
Okay. So I started my process at around 10:30, 11 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
What I did is that I used 300 I built 300 lineups with different configurations of stacks and type of thing with 4 different projection sets.
Sure, with an aggregate, right?
No, not with an aggregate.
I get it. Okay.
The 300 with each.
Sure.
And then I would run them through the portfolio correlation matrix.
Okay.
And then I would see what are the most what players stick to each other the most.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, it's going to be the higher owned players, the higher projected players. But I wanted to see what do Hurts, Brown, Swift lineups look like?
Right.
Who's in that like that type of stuff. So I would jot that all down, right? Not a ton of stuff, just the main stuff of like, okay, I got to make sure I don't want to have these players together, players together, those players together. I did a ton of that, and then I went in, made my groups, right? Also, made groups. Like what would end up happening is that I would get like Wentz, Dotson, Kirk stacks, and it's like, do I want Dotson as a one-off? Do I want Dotson in a wedge stack, or do I want to force in McLaurin?
Yeah.
Now, being that I thought Dotson was actually going to be a little bit higher owned than he actually ended up being, I said, no, if I'm playing Wentz, I want to play McLaurin. Like, Dotson could be the second guy, but, like, he can't be the main guy. Same thing with Hurts. I was getting a ton of Hurts, Goddard. Yeah. And once I saw that all these projection systems, based on the projections would have, if you're building single stacks with a run back, you're going to get a lot of Goddard in tight end and not enough A.J. Brown.
Right.
So I made sure to do it's like, okay, if I'm playing Hurts, got to play A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith, but not Goddard as the main person. So basically using your tool, which is part of the theory of daily fantasy sports for advanced players, to see what the field is more likely to do, especially if they're misusing projections.
Right. And just running things through an optimizer.
Right. Just running things through an optimizer. Unique players, 1 or 2, 300 lineups. I want to see a 2+1 stack, a 3+1, a 2, and plus also the 1v1s. Like if you're going to play one guy on one side and the other guy on the other side. So just running those types of lineups just to see what popular constructions will be.
Yeah.
What defenses go up with those constructions. I mean, it's mostly the most owned stuff. But you get these outlier stuff based on using projections of like what type of lineups have Romeo Doubs in it. Right? And not having Romeo Doubs in that type of lineup. What type of lineups have Jahan that need that cheap receiver? What types of lineups have Damian Pierce in the running back spot at 4,800? Because you need a cheap, like Damian Pierce is more tied to Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson than he is, and Kelsey. Pierce and Kelsey stuck together, right? But you wouldn't see as many like Pierce, Clyde Edwards-Helaire lineups. Because they're both cheap running backs, and other running backs are going to be more owned. So just using that as a tool to just how should I build my groups so I could have different player combinations. I could still have chalky players in my lineup, but just not in popular combinations. Right. I don't want to be 2v2s. I want to be 5v5s off of the field. So doing that, and then once I did that, okay, now I have my group set. So then I would go through and aggregate all my projections together.
Yeah.
Not equally, but to some extent. And then since I'm grouping out those players, I'm also probably going to be less exposed to them. So basically, capping the exposure to those players and then increasing and minimum exposure to anything that was negatively correlated to them.
Sure. Okay.
So that's why I had like McLaurin on Dotson, like Pitt. I had a bunch, not a bunch, but I mean like I would put like I want at least 5% of Pierce and Paris Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I want at least 5% of Mo Alley Cox. I want an outsized percentage, at least 10, 15 of Jonathan Taylor. Right? Because that's on Marquise Pittman. Right? I had 15%. I ended up with 15% AJ Green.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't necessarily work out, but
no, I had AJ
leverage
Green
on Marquise Brown.
Mm-hmm.
I had a ton of DJ Moore. Leverage on McCaffrey. Barkley, I didn't know what else to do. I had a little bit of Wan'Dale Robinson, a little bit of Kadarius Toney. I didn't do much there because there wasn't much to do because the Giants really did. Who am I going to play other than Barkley?
They suck, yeah.
Right, and then I had a bunch of like Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Mecole Hardman to be the leverage off of Kelsey and Juju Smith-Schuster and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I would do that. And then let me run through 300 lineups of each 4 different stack types. And that would take, with all the groups and everything, would take a couple of minutes. Run through those and then eliminated. And each of those 300 builds, the top and bottoms, basically the highest owned and the lowest projected.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then take all of them, throw them in the portfolio trimmer.
There you go. Yep.
And using the portfolio trimmer, I would go basically quarterback by quarterback. And essentially, smart trim them.
Yep.
Smart trim. And then I would take the lineups. I was playing 150 large field lineups.
Mm-hmm.
Not all in one contest, but in multiple whatever type of contests. I got it down to like 180 something by doing that. And then I would just sort and go. I threw it back in the portfolio correlation matrix. Because now I have my 183, but I'm like, what do I have too much of? And like I had too much Raiders stacks for my risk tolerance. I could have played them, whatever. Yeah. So I just started getting rid of just going through manually in Excel, just looking for a car and going, I want to have less of this and eliminating them one by one. Right. I also had a bunch of Winston, a little bit too many. Maybe Winston, Michael Thomas type lineups. So I got rid of some of that. And then I got down to 150. And I was like, oh, there's my 150. Throw it in. And then once I had the 150, I was going to pick, I have 12 single entry 3 max lineups.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to pick the 12 out of those that I want to play. So basically instead of now I have all 150 together. So it says all the quarterbacks together. I trim the bottom because I want a higher projection for those types of contests. And I trim the top using the thresholds in the portfolio trimmer. And I got it down to a nice maybe 60.
Right.
And then I went by something, I only want to play out of my 12, no more than like maybe 2 or 3 Clyde Edwards-Helaire lineups. So I would just sort by Clyde Edwards-Helaire and then smart trim just those lineups. And I would get, okay, here's 2 lineups. Okay, cut and paste those 2 lineups into my DK file for those 12 contests. Now I have 10 more lineups to go. Get rid of those in the portfolio trimmer and then go through and then find the 12 that I want to play and put them in and upload everything and there you go. I mean, lineup HQ, I used to build all the lineups that I could jump in there, but I just, import, export the projections, everything. I mean, the portfolio correlation matrix takes, typically a minute or 2.
Yeah, with that many lineups.
Right, with that many lineups, that many diversification, stuff like that. But, I mean, it wasn't that hard.
Yeah. No, I mean, it probably took you about 45 minutes? Do everything?
Well, I mean, a lot of it came in the beginning because I had to run 300 lineups,
right?
Different configuration. I mean, that's something you could do the night before. But I mean, of course, depending on the news and projections get updated.
Yeah.
Right? Because I want most people are building lineups in the morning. So if I'm going to do some reconnaissance on their projections, I want at least the early. I don't need the inactives unless there's some big inactives we're waiting on. Like I don't care necessarily about having the inactives projections when I'm at least doing the portfolio correlation stuff earlier.
Right.
When I build my lineup, once noon comes around, I just update all the projections, upload them again, and
yeah, because you already have all your groups. It doesn't like those inactives, especially yesterday. It was just J.K. Dobbins. That was all we were waiting on. And it's not like the groups were going to be heavily affected by J.K. Dobbins.
Right. And people in chat, where can I find this new tool? It's part of the theory of daily fantasy sports for advanced players. It includes custom Excel tools for Microsoft Excel, including lineup optimizers, lineup simulators, portfolio trimmer, portfolio correlation matrix, duplication checker and predictor, contest reviewer, contest history analyzer. Yep, I used it for Showdown on Thursday. It was fine.
I've really been liking it for Showdown. I've been using them a lot for Showdown. I built myself a little optimizer in Python because I've kind of wanted to. I've been really into building a lot of lineups lately, like way more than I can handle in Lineup HQ. We're talking like I have one program where I'm building out about 2 million lineups in like 16 seconds so that I can just like shotgun, see some things, shotgun again, see some things. But this one, that one's a lineup builder, right? And this new tool is a lineup optimizer that I'm using for Showdown. And I'm building out 5,000 lineups, and then I'm checking the stats of those lineups. And then after I build those out, and I see, okay, so yesterday, like Tom Brady was in 20% of captain lineups in those, and Mike Evans was in 16% or something like that. And then I'm checking the projections, checking the ownership. And then I take all of those lineups and I go into the portfolio trimmer and then I trim through and I see, okay, I mean, who are the captains that I can even really use, right? Because after building out 5,000 lineups, it's nice to see who I have at captain, but it's better to see who is in the captain of the lineups that are actually plus EV and actually matter. And being able to use the tools on that, being able to run them through the correlation matrix and see, okay, well, if I'm optimizing based on projections for RotoGrinders, then this is who I'm getting together. If I'm optimizing using my projections over at Paydirt, then this is who I'm getting. And then being able to say, all right, well, I probably don't want to have a combination of like CeeDee Lamb and Mike Evans. I want to try to get away from that because that's going to be a super popular combination. Stuff like that. I have found it very, very easy to use for Showdown for sure.
Yeah, and especially with the size of contest that you're playing, right? Smaller field stuff, you don't have to worry about it as much, but the larger field stuff. I mean, I think on the Thursday Showdown, I had 75 lineups, and I ended up with I had 70, or did I end up with 89 line? I don't know. I don't remember. I played so many slates, I don't remember. But I had like my under fives were I think I got like 57 under fives.
Pretty good.
Out of 75 and only 16 uniques. But remember, I typically, based on my risk tolerance, aim for under fives. I mean, it's the same thing in MMA. He said like uniques. Yeah, I want to get some, but I also don't want to play lineups that are so poorly projected and so bad.
Right.
Just I want to avoid. I think once I checked, I think I had one lineup that was duped 34 times, one lineup that was duped 22, one lineup that was duped like 10, and then the rest were under 10 at least. And then like more than half were under 5. So it's like, okay. And then I had 16 uniques. And
yeah,
it's like based on the combinations, you look at the lineups and you go, okay, these aren't nutso lineups. Yeah, some of them leave 6,000 on the table. Yeah, sure, okay. Stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But for the main slate, for a Sunday slate, I mean, I don't care about duplicate. That part of the process doesn't even.
No,
I'm not going to dupe in the middle. I don't care about duping in the middle.
And I've had people ask me with the dupe predictor. They're like, "Well, why does it only have 6 slots?" It's like you're only using this for Showdown and MMA and PGA. Like it's you.
James, can I cut you off there?
Let me finish
That's
my
probably an
thought.
oversight. You probably should update it.
So yes, sure.
What happens if we have 2 games slate, like 2 games the Thanksgiving slate?
Let me finish my thought,
I
Mr.
always
Pac-Man.
barge in once I hear something that I don't agree with, and I need to clarify.
And I agree. And I was going to say there is likely going to be an update this week where I update it to 8 spots specifically for 2-game slates and short slates, because I do think that is important. But the logic has to be retooled, right? Remember that originally when this was built, it was built for Showdown and for MMA. So I do have to retool the logic a little bit, because that logic is not going to apply to an 8-person or a 10-person lineup. I have to retool the globals, but it is an update that I'm planning on working on. But yeah, I've had people ask why it only has 6 slots, and that's why. It's because trying to predict dupes on a main slate, that's not what it's for. Like you're not if
on a main slate of a large size.
On like a main
slate plays
slate.
more like Showdown.
Say that again. Like a
2-game slate. We're going to get into NBA season where opening night is 2 games, and then duplication matters.
The nuance here between main slate and 2-game slate here, like, yeah, sure, there are going to be main slates that are 2 games, and I agree with you. And let me talk for a second. But typically, when I say main slate, I mean 5+ games and whatever. But there will be an update. There will be an update.
Right, but for yesterday's Sunday slate, like, you don't worry about dupes.
No.
Right. As long as you're not playing your cash lineup, right? As long as you're not playing, the collusion lineup,
right?
Or any of the several collusion lineups.
Anything over 4 games, like,
I'd say anything over 3 games.
I'd also, but I wanted to be safe in saying 4 games so you wouldn't cut me off again.
Right.
Anything over 4 games.
So in my best lineup GPP wise, like I said, I lost money in GPPs yesterday, but I made money. Right. I put in, for transparent purposes, I played about $8,500 worth of volume between both sites, and I got back 12.5.
That's not bad.
So I made $4,000. But this was my best lineup in one of the power sweeps, whatever, the 150, 50K 3-entry max. So you can see I'm Hurts. I didn't mind Hurts, but Hurts plus AJ Brown, right? I played a ton of Chase and Jefferson. Like, the fact that Jefferson was only 12% owned in the milli
that's wild.
Wild, yeah, that is wild. But it's like play Terry McLaurin. People are playing Dotson or Gibson or something. It's like, okay, Terry McLaurin. Play Zach. Like, I'm playing Edwards-Helaire and Zach Ertz. Everyone's playing Kelsey, Juju, Marquise Brown. It's like, I'll play Ertz and CEH. And of course, Barkley fits into this lineup. It doesn't mean you fade all the chalk or anything. It's just like, I didn't have Barkley plus Pittman plus Kelsey.
Right.
I mean, like, I didn't have, so I could build a lineup like this. Of course, Giants defense would have been better if it was a Steelers defense.
Is what it is.
Right, is what it is. Play a 1.9% Jacoby Myers. I played a bunch of Tua stacks. I played a lot of Tyreek Hill.
I was seeing a lot of Miami stacks from Sharps. Seeing a lot of that.
Well, because you have big playmaker. Because New England looks horrible.
Oh yeah, no, they're
right.
crap.
So who knows what's going to happen? That's what I said. We don't know anything yet. The only thing that I know is that I probably want to bet on, especially receivers, that we already know are big play receivers. Right. So, like, I didn't want to have that much Juju. Right. I didn't want to have that much. If you take a look at some of the ownership here, like, I felt like some of these guys, like, do I want to play that much Adam Thielen in GPP? Right. Or even Randall Cobb or punt with Damian Pierce at running back? It's like, I could find some $4,800 guy, Najee Harris, with a horrible Pittsburgh offensive line.
I cannot believe that people were on Najee Harris yesterday.
No, his workload. He's a running back. He's 6,400, and he has a workload. Okay, I get it. I had a lot of T. Higgins, and of course, he gets concussed, and he's got out of the game. Tyreek Hill was 8% owned in this contest. He's at 6,800. Like, why not?
Yeah. I had I had Miami projected well. I had Miami right below Cincinnati as a stack, and I had Cincinnati twice as owned. I had Miami as a fine stack. I didn't have any problem with that.
What was your can I guess what your your crazy projection of the week, because that was a theme last year.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
Okay, I think I may already know, because I think maybe you tweeted it out. Sammy Watkins.
Yeah, Sammy Watkins.
What did you have? Okay, what was your median or mean projection for Sammy Watkins?
I had him for 14.
Let me see what the aggregate was yesterday. 10.29. So okay.
So here's the thing.
Four is a bit high, but at least I was expecting to see 7 and be like, you're double.
We're gonna see less of the really weird stuff this year, because I made some improvements to the models in the offseason.
In better terminology, you fixed it.
I fixed
you actually fixed it.
No, so what I did was, we can say fixed, but when we're saying fixed, what I did was I fixed the outlier situations, right? Like I fixed the extremes. So I tried to pull in the extremes and the externalities of the models. So situations like Quez Watkins last year, remember when we had Quez Watkins like 2 weeks in a row, projected for 15 or something? Situations like that are going to be a lot less, because I ended up progressing and pulling things back quite a bit on kind of like the weirdo wide receivers. Week 1, I was very close to in line directionally with a lot of the industry. Remember that I project under a little bit, so I'm a little bit conservative on wide receiver projections overall. But like I had Justin Jefferson top overall. I had Devontae Adams, Jamar Chase, Terry McLaurin, Mike Williams. Like I was pretty in line.
Mike Williams, wow. Keenan Allen gets hurt. That Chargers situation, if it's going to be one of those things where good luck for yay, Chargers have a 2018 total. And Herbert projects well, but who do you pair him with? Because he could throw to 11 people.
Yeah, Rich Hybrar tweeted it out. Routes run with Keenan Allen off the field in week 1. Mike Williams, 19, 3 targets. Gerald Everett, 2 targets. Josh Palmer, 2 targets. DeAndre Carter, 4 targets. Austin Eckler, 3 targets. Trey McKitty, 4 targets. Joshua Kelly, 1 target. I'm pretty heavily invested in the Chargers offense in best ball, right? I have a lot of Mike Williams, a lot of Mike Williams. So because I think he's the best wide receiver on that team. But if he's only going to get 3 targets when Keenan Allen gets hurt, I'm not happy about that.
James, we're coming up on my favorite week of the season.
I know, overreaction season.
Week two.
I know.
I'm going all in, Mike. I know the Chargers play on Thursday, so
yeah.
Play a lot of Mike Williams in Showdown, maybe.
No, it's going to be interesting. If we're looking at this, I mean, I generally think that with teams, when there's an injury that happens in game, when they have a full game plan, right? Because week 1, they'll script out a full half, right? So if there's an injury to that script, I do think that typically it's chaos, like we saw with the Chargers. But then when they have a week of preparation, I think that they end up cutting off the fat a little bit. I think we'll see less of DeAndre Carter or Trey McKitty moving forward. But this isn't an analysis show. We just ship post on the show. So I'll talk about that later. But yeah.
But those are the types of things. I mean, that's an injury situation because of Keenan Allen. But I mean, if we take a look at we go by just fantasy. I'm just going to sort by fantasy points right here.
Yeah.
Okay. Justin Jefferson, I mean, is he always going to put up 42 points?
Yes.
No, but I'll play Justin Jefferson. I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
But I could see the pricing probably comes out soon or already came out. Saquon Barkley's the type of player. He'll be 6,800 and maybe he'll be over-owned next week.
Yeah.
Or Jamar, well, it depends on what Higgins is. If Higgins is out, maybe Jamar Chase actually, why not? Maybe we're playing Tyler Boyd in cash games.
Oh, Tyler Boyd all day.
Right? Or DeAndre Swift did well. So maybe he'll be 7,400. I don't know I don't even know what the matchups are for next week. But I'm just trying to see situations of players that AJ Brown went nuts, but I mean, why couldn't that have been Devonta Smith or Dallas Goedert? Why couldn't it have been someone? It could have been someone else.
Yeah.
Cordell Patterson, I just don't play no matter what. And if he's in the Millie Maker winning lineup, he didn't have to be there. But like Robbie Anderson's performance, like Robbie Anderson scored pretty much all of his points on one play.
75-yard touchdown.
Right, which is kind of old school Robbie Anderson anyway. So like DJ Moore may be under 6K next week, and it'll be like, well, I'm going to take a shot on that. Right, Dontrell Hilliard was 0%.
Dontrell Hilliard, he's going to get a little bit of ownership next week.
Right. Or Devin Duvernay. It's like, oh, I'm going to pair Duvernay with Lamar Jackson or Jahan Dotson. Like McLaurin may be less owned. Like, I'm just looking at situations of like, how could we benefit from a 1 week sample size, especially if the points came primarily on either touchdown passes or one play. Like Dotson caught 2 touchdown passes on 4 targets.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Robbie Anderson had 5 catches with 1 75-yard touchdown.
I think
stuff like that.
The way that I usually look at this, I want to sort by guys I want to look at guys who really underperformed. Because I think that's where people, like, when we think about the way that people psychologically react to stimuli, right? Here's some decision theory for you. People are more inclined to avoid things that hurt them rather than go after things that have rewarded them, right? So the guys who are highly owned that underproduced, that's where I like to look in week 2.
Marquise Brown.
Yeah, Marquise Brown or Juju Smith-Schuster, right? Like Travis Kelce.
Well, he did well in the first half. It just they didn't have to do anything the second half.
Right, but people are still going to look at that and be like, oh, well, it's Travis Kelce and, whatever.
Dude, I had Juju in my cash lineup, but when I see a line of like, what? It was like he was like 7 for 70 or something in the first half. I'm like, okay, I'm getting the bonus. Give me the bonus. But it's like the Chiefs didn't have to do anything, right? But I mean, I see people will look at Christian McCaffrey's, like Baker Mayfield ain't throwing to him or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe people don't play him as much next week. Yeah. Or Aaron Jones. They look at this Packers offense and go, yuck. And A.J. Dillon took a lot of rushing work. I mean, from him. Look at Alvin Kamara. I mean, what are the Saints doing? Watch some of that stuff. Number one, Taysom Hill, which is what we're used to, but they're running Wildcats with Mark Ingram. Like dude, you have Alvin Kamara on your team. Why are you not just getting the ball to Alvin Kamara or Tanner for the Titans? Like there was like a 4th and 1 or a 3rd and 1 or something like that, and they did some like tight end reverse or like you have Derrick Henry on your team. It's 1 yard. If you don't trust Derrick Henry to get 1 yard, why do you play him then?
Right.
It's like they overthink themselves. It's like, but there's 8 guys in the box. It's Derrick Henry and it's 1 yard. Just run it up the middle for crying out loud. What's so complicated about this?
I know.
They're running Wildcat with Mark Ingram. At least do it with Alvin Kamara. Like you don't even have him on the field. Like what is going on here? Austin Eckler, people are going to overreact to Austin Eckler.
Yeah, by a lot.
He didn't even get a 50% snap share.
I know. Well, to be fair, like Austin Eckler has been talking all offseason about like, hey, stop working me so hard. And maybe the coaching staff actually paid attention to that one.
He's too big. Why? Because he's too busy playing video games.
Yeah, he's too busy being a podcast host with Matt Harmon.
Right. So who else has underperformed yesterday? I'm just going through the ownership. Like there's especially those, like the more owned the player was in week 1 that didn't do well, then right. Let's see. There will be games this season with the way the Vikings will be playing offense and maybe playing against a better competitive team than the Packers. That Justin Jefferson is super chalk and Adam Thielen goes 5 for 60 with 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, because that's what he does. He's their main red zone threat.
Right. So, like, there's going to be a time where you're going to look at Adam Thielen's game logs. He's going to be like 4,800 in a perceived bad matchup, right? And then be like, okay, I'm just going to catch 3 touchdowns or something like that.
Derrick Henry, only 8 fantasy points.
Right.
I think Damian Pierce was an interesting situation because he did get quite a few carries, but he just didn't do anything with them. They were just super inefficient. And at 4,800, I mean, his price probably, I don't know, he wasn't super chalk, but I think he's probably still going to be low fives. He's going to be pretty interesting to see how people react because he was.
But I think the context of the game, that we didn't expect the Texans to be the ones that were up in the game,
right?
And then they relied on Rex Burkhead more than the rookie. I mean, like I think
and that makes sense. I mean, rookies, people overreact in the first couple of weeks. I mean, especially week one, people are like, oh yeah, this rookie is going to be everything. Like, what did Sky Moore do this year or this week? Absolutely, literally nothing. Even though they had a massive lead, they could have just let the rookie go out there, but they still. And Jalen Tolbert literally didn't even play for Dallas when they're considering using Tony Pollard in the slot. So people think that rookies are just God's gift in week one, and it almost always backfires.
Smooth Jimmy Apollo in the YouTube chat. Feel free to post whatever you want in the YouTube chat, questions or whatever. Mid-size 1 to 5K entry tourney. Are you willing to give up more projection for a leverage play like Alec Pierce on Pittman JT, or do you still just focus on how much projection loss is worth the ownership? No. The extra leverage gives you extra relative value, so it's worth more to you.
It matters more.
Is it worth 10 points of projection? No, of course not. But yes, you would factor it in the same way that you'd factor in some type of positive correlation. Like it's not reflected in the mean or median projection. So it's like, well, once you put Mahomes plus Juju plus Kelsey together, you get an extra 3 points on your mean because you're aiming for it, because when one thing happens, the other thing happens. So it's very same thing with, well, there's so many more Pittman lineups. By playing a negative correlation to Pittman, I think I gain an extra 1 to 1.5 points in relative value. And you add that to your mean projection and count that towards it. So that's kind of what it means. Yes.
Well,
so yes, I'm willing to give up more projection for plays that give me more relative value, which means they have direct leverage off of a highly owned player, where if that guy does well, the other guy typically doesn't.
We'll also note that this, like in the 1 to 5K size, right? Like that's going to matter more, where you're willing to give up a little bit more projection.
Right.
And then as it gets larger and larger and larger, you're willing to give up more and more and more projection. If this is like a 200-man single entry or something like that, that 10 points of fantasy that you're losing, even if you gain a little bit of relative value, you're adding so much volatility to your lineup that like it might not even be worth it at that point either.
But you still, James, you still have to balance it out. Like
you do.
This is where people go wrong, right? They think too much in black and white. So
and they think too much in single player.
Right. Well, it's not even that. I'm talking about, like, for instance, it sounds counterintuitive. We're hitting NFL season now, which is the perfect example of this. It sounds counterintuitive, but I'm more likely to get contrarian in single entry and 3 max than I am in the milli maker. And you go, why wouldn't you get more? Because you're thinking of the term contrarian as meaning one thing only, black and white. So, for instance, in a single entry like the power sweep or some 3 max. The Spy, 4,000 entries or a 1,000, like the same type of mid-sized tournament. Pittman may be 38% owned, right? As opposed to the milli, where maybe there's the $100 milli with 27% owned, which means the higher owned Pittman gets, the more leverage you get by playing Alec Pierce or Paris Campbell or something like that. Because there's so much more ownership condensing on certain players, you could play more contrarian by playing the leverage plays. But in the rest of your lineup, you're probably playing the highest. Like, you're not dropping so much projection. It's just that, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play Ertz at tight end, and I'm going to play Alec Pierce at wide receiver, not play Kelsey, not play Pittman.
And then just chalk everything else.
Right. And then I could just press, like, as long as it's a stack and whatever, and just give me the highest projected at that point. Right. So it's not a matter of like, okay, you can still have a high projected lineup, but you're getting so much more relative value with these certain direct leverage points. In the milli maker, however, it doesn't work that way because we have so much more dead money that doesn't even play the good, the better projected plays often enough that you have Michael Pittman. It doesn't give you as much. Yeah, 27% ownership. it's still enough to give you leverage by playing Pierce or Pat Campbell or something, Mo Alley Cox or whatever, but nowhere near as much as when he's 38 to 40% owned, right? If Barkley's 40% owned, that's so much more leverage available than when he's 19.6% owned. Let's say, for instance, if you could compute the efficient ownership of a player in the Millie Maker, and you had Barkley's efficient ownership at 23%. Now, in the power sweep, you have his efficient ownership, because it's a smaller field contest, at 29%. If Barkley comes in at 40% owned in the small field contest, you're more likely to not play him. But in the Millie Maker, you're actually more likely to be a little bit more overweight on him because he's actually under-owned, right? Now, you find a way to get different in the rest. You still want to lower total ownership. You want to lower ownership some for the Millie, but it's not like I'm avoiding the top projected point per dollar salary adjusted value players, because there are so many more people that are not playing them because they're just not playing them.
I find that you have to make less. Like I always tell people in coaching sessions that you're pretty much only making like 5 to 6 decisions on a slate. If you're making a decision on like this main slate, you made a decision on Michael Pittman, Saquon Barkley, Travis Kelce, and like Jalen Hurts or something like that, right? So in the Millie Maker, in these really large field stuff, I feel like you have to make less of those pivots. Like you only have to go off of one of those things. Whereas in smaller fields, like maybe you have to make more decisions on those kind of things. Just because
people try to get too cute. They go, well, I'm gonna. Oh, what are the top 8 owned players? I'm just gonna not play any of them. Mm-hmm. Well, they're owned for a reason, because they project extremely well for their salary. So like, you're betting on a slate where all of them fail. Like, that's unlikely. Yeah. Now it's unlikely that all 8 of them do well, right? Some will overperform their median, and some will underperform their median, because that's why it's a median. It's a 50th percentile outcome. But for you to just blindly go in and say, well, I'm either not going to play him, or that's the black and white thinking of like, yeah, I had plenty of Pittman lineups. I had plenty of Kelce lineups. I had plenty of Barkley lineups. The thing is, I didn't have any lineups that had 2 of those players in it on the first week of the season, where projections could be really fragile. And I don't want to have similar player combinations, especially Barkley being like the creme de la creme of the cheaper running backs, and Kelce being like the highest priced tight end. Like, those builds led to, and I'm not going to do the other thing. I'm going to play Mac Jones stacks, right? Like, I'm not doing like, yeah, in those lineups, you can play Pittman, Kelce, Barkley, right? If you want to do something nutso in the rest of your lineup, but it's like, you don't even need to. You can still play the top projected teams.
I had people saying, "Oh, well, I think I'm going to have some. I think I'm going to go with like Atlanta and Chicago stacks today." And I'm like,
I played some Mariota.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. If you have 150,
I did not think that Bears 49ers game. I avoid that. I had the least amount. I was like, no.
I had Eli Mitchell. I had Eli Mitchell in my
yeah, me too, and he got hurt.
Yeah, painful. But like, I said it in my main slate breakdown video that one of the bigger mistakes that people make, especially week 1, is trying to get super far off the board when it's like, we have established things that you can bet on. We have these games that have totals over 50. Like, we have players that are very well and underpriced based on offseason ADP. Like, we have a lot of information week 1. Even if we don't know things, we know things about teams. And I think that people they get so weirdo just so they can be like, yeah, well, it was contrarian. And like, look, I cashed with this lineup that has like 4 water boys on it. It's like, I don't care, dude. Go take a victory lap somewhere else.
Grant Brown in the chat says you can play Saquon Barkley X percentage and be overweight, but getting off the combination of him with 1 or 2 of Kelce, Pittman, Hurts, Commanders D. Yeah, which is exactly what I was doing, which is why you go to theoryofdfs.com, you get the advanced players course, and you get James's portfolio correlation matrix tool. Now, obviously, when the ownership is condensed, like, dude, it's the highest owned players that are going to stick together. Because why are they the highest owned? They project the best. You get the best median out of them, and the pieces fit together, right? But there are certain players that you may think stick to one another, but don't stick to as much as you think. That's why I thought, like, okay, do I have to group out Justin Jefferson? And it turns out I didn't.
Right.
Jamar Chase, I didn't. Right? Do I have to group out? I mean, you don't have to, but like some of the guys that projected well, they project well, but they're still not in popular combinations. It's like yeah, Hurts is popular, but AJ Brown isn't sticking to him. Goddard is sticking to him more than anything. So it's like, okay, I don't mind it. Hurts, AJ Brown, like, oh, how do you play Hurts is going to be the most owned quarterback? Obviously not. Well, AJ Brown ain't going to be the most owned. Right. And then on the other side, it's like, okay, put Swift together. And I go, okay, what lineups do those look like? Like lineups that look like that don't have Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase in it. Right. So it's like, I don't mind that combination now, even though it's like, oh, you're playing guys that aren't like single digit owned. It's like, yeah. And I'm playing them in combinations that are less owned in combination to one another. I'm just not playing. I can play a ton of Travis Kelce, just not have it all with Saquon Barkley and Michael Pittman. Like it really just comes down to that. So when people ask, especially, until you learn the fundamental game theory of DFS, someone will ask James, right? We'll have it's week 1 of NFL, right? Week 2 coming up. Which one should I fade? Barkley, Pittman, or Kelce? And what would the correct answer? What would my answer be?
Your answer would be, what does the rest of the lineup look like?
Right. I mean, you fade. I would suggest for the large field contests or even the small field one, maybe don't play more than one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You could build, if you want to play all 3, you're going to have to get weirder elsewhere. If you're only going to play 2, you still have to get weird, but not as weird. If you play 1, now you kind of feel free to this guy projects well, so why not play him? It's like, okay, then to do that instead. I mean, like, but it doesn't come down to which one do I play and which one do I don't. It's like you could build 100 plus EV lineups with Barkley. You could build 100 plus EV lineups with Kelce. You could build 100 plus EV lineups with Pittman. And you have 300 lineups there that all have about the same expected value. So, like, with pick one. I mean,
you just play any of them.
Play any of them, right? DFix says my best lineup had Barkley, Pittman, Kelce, Jefferson, but it was a low-owned stain stack. Okay. Well, that's the reason I didn't do well on GPP yesterday, because Barkley, Pittman, and Kelce all did well.
Yeah, I went with Arizona. I went with an Arizona stack, a Baltimore stack, and a Las Vegas Raiders stack. And I was happy with all.
Playing the rate. What did you do with the rate?
So
those Carr line, I could see playing Carr plus Adams, but
I was fine with Carr, Adams, and Waller because the total was so high. And I'm totally fine because Carr, he's not going to be a GPP winning quarterback unless he has 4 touchdowns, and I'm not going to expect him to throw 4 touchdowns to one of Waller or Adams. I'm fine with that. And obviously, like the total being at 52, it lets me bring back either Mike Williams or Keenan Allen or whoever. And also, the prices weren't exorbitant on them to where I
get the Waller, like James. I get the Waller because tight end sucked. If Kelce didn't put up a million points, 14 points could win tight end. I get it, but I mean, I wouldn't have done Adams Renfrow. I wouldn't. I mean, just
no, I'm not doing that. A lot of the time, if I'm going to be playing something like that, and there's an elite tight end on the team, I'm just going to have them in my stack. Like the 3 tight ends that I played yesterday were Kelce, Andrews, and Waller. It's like I just don't want to take shots on those really cheap tight ends most of the time. And if I can get one in my stack, I like it even more. That's one of the reasons why I play the Baltimore stacks, because I can have Mark Andrews in it. Travis Kelce on the Arizona stack.
Played Lamar, Bateman, Andrews.
Yeah, that's what I played. Yeah.
Right. And then you played Elijah Moore as the run back.
I did indeed. Yep.
Okay. But that makes sense.
And the biggest issue with that was that my secondary correlation was Sammy Watkins, Adam Thielen.
Well, that's the way it happens. Whatever happens.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I barely played any double stacks.
So, and you barely played any bringbacks?
No, I did play bringbacks, but I didn't play skinny,
okay.
like 2+1s.
Right.
Right, 2+1, barely any double stacks. And for the reason is the totals were low.
Mm-hmm.
The early part of the season typically favors the defense more than the offense. And the likelihood, I think that the double stacks would be over-owned for the contest that I play. So I'm more likely to, can I get as many big play people into my lineups as possible rather than like correlating as much. I didn't think there would be a standout game that you needed 3+1. I mean, if any of them was going to happen, it would have been the KC Arizona game. I thought the Raiders Chargers game. I thought the pricing
they were expensive,
right? Cost prohibitive. So I'm like, that game could go off, but the pricing would make it that if it gets spread around enough, no one gets there right? Enough to get to be a GPP winning score. And the only double stack that I may have had some of is the the Cousins, Jefferson, Irv Smith. Like the Vikings offense tends to be much more condensed. So you kind of know where the ball's going. So like in those types of offenses, I don't mind the double stacks as much. But I mean, I just thought it was a week, which I was correct on, that the scoring was going to be lower in general. And you'd be better off just trying to find the big play. But I wasn't playing like all one-offs. I was playing secondary correlations, right? Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson, right? Stuff like that. So you'd have, like we have Jacoby Myers, Tyreek Hill, right? Something like that. Or Michael Thomas, Kyle Pitts.
I thought it was an interesting week. And this is, it might be something that we look at throughout the entire season where it felt really lopsided. And I think that there's going to be that this is James's minute of season long predictions here. But I think there's going to be a lot of parity in the league this year. And I think that there's going to be a lot of lopsided matchups. And I think that bringbacks will actually be a lot less important this year in GPPs. Because we've kind of seen the league get to this point where quarterback and coaching combos are so vastly important. Like the good teams are going to be really good this year. And the teams that are not as good are going to be really hurting. And I think there will be a lot less of importance in bringbacks. And I think there might even be a little bit less impact on secondary correlations as well, because I think there's going to be a lot of blowups this year. So
there'll be more games like 37-10.
Yeah.
And just have 3 players on the winning team and you don't need.
Well, and it was really easy for me to look like in my breakdown video, I noted 2 things. I noted one, that Pittsburgh was a really good team to back because I thought that Cincinnati with their O-line was being new. It's improved, but it's new, and that stuff takes to gel. So I said that Pittsburgh was a good bet. I said that Chicago was a good bet. And then I said that the Chiefs were just going to stomp Arizona. And all of those things came through because when you look at the disparity between those teams and when you look at the way those teams act, I just think that there's going to be a lot of lopsided stuff. And I think there's going to be a lot of lower scoring games. And I just think that bringback correlations specifically are going to matter a lot less.
Strawfest 23, what's a secondary correlation? That just means 2 players from opposite sides of a game that don't involve the quarterback in the line.
Yeah. So instead of a one-off, it's like a one-off correlation. It's like a one-off stack type thing, just without the QB.
So for instance, a primary correlation in your lineup, I'll show it in lineup HQ. Right. Well, I shouldn't have clicked on that. Okay, right. Like a primary correlation is I'm going to take the quarterback, right? I'm going to play Jalen Hurts, right? Plus AJ Brown or something, if I could find him. Right. So that would be a primary, and because it involves the quarterback, because he's the focal point of the entire lineup, right? So, and a bring back would be like playing someone on the Detroit side of the ball, like Amon-Ra St. Brown or something, right? So this would be a 2+1, right? 2 from one side, 1 from the other, which includes the quarterback. A 3+1 would be if you play Goddard, right? So now you have a quarterback plus 2 pass catchers, and a 1 bring back. A secondary correlation is just 2 people on 2 sides of a game, right? That's very similar. Like if I just took out this,
right?
this is a secondary. So let's say I wanted AJ Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I'm going to play that in a Kyler Murray, Marquise Brown type of line, right? So the primary correlation is Murray Brown, and we have 3 Browns in the line. I didn't realize I was doing that, but yeah,
yeah,
a lot of brown, hot brown. I'm in Louisville, hot brown. So yeah, so the secondary correlation is just anything with 2 guys from opposite sides of the game in your lineup. So I build a lot of my lineups with secondary correlations.
I do too.
It's like you're building 2 stacks into your lineup
because the goal
only one of them has a quarterback.
One of the goals is to get paid the most on making the least decisions that you need to get right.
Right.
And so if you can do secondary correlations in your lineups as well as the primary correlations, it makes the things that you have to get right less.
Right. But they typically will only work in high scoring close games. And the point that you're making
or with 2 players that have massive market shares, even if it's on a bad team.
Right. But you're making the point, which I agree with to a certain extent, that we may see a lot more games this year that, like, if it's lopsided, even though it may not look lopsided, it's like, well, Miami was only favored by like 3 points over New England, but it's like, if New England sucks, like this game could be lopsided. So I mean, like this game, you might as well just play the Dolphins and no bring back.
Well, we even saw that in the close games, right, with Cincinnati and Pittsburgh and with Indianapolis and Houston, right? Both of those games were very close. We still saw the better teams produce massively more fantasy points than the worst teams. And I think that matters. I think we're still going to see that a lot this year. I'll put it into the correct DFS terminology here. I think that double stacking and bringbacks and secondary correlations will be over-owned in GPPs this year relative to their actual value in the contest.
Maybe not the large field stuff.
Yeah. But I think
small field stuff, maybe, yes.
In the stuff, I guess in the stuff that I want to play, I think it'll be over-owned.
Right. And the stuff like the Millie, people just, there are tons of people that don't even know any of that stuff. Yeah. Like they don't even consider it. Yeah. Let alone do it too much.
And if
the same thing you say about baseball, right? People, it's 2022, and people are like, oh, everyone stacks in MLB. It's like, have you looked at CSVs? You'll still find 20, 25% of lineups that don't stack at all.
And
like, how are these people playing? It's like, yeah, why do you think we're all profitable at?
And Jordan, so you said that there's a lot of people that don't even know about some of these concepts. Where can they find out how to learn these concepts?
Theoryofdfs.com. Right? We have the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports for Advanced Players course. It just came out 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. Right? Get the first course. That's the concepts course. Is if you're really new to DFS, you should really new to playing DFS seriously. You should listen to that first. But then get the Advanced Players Guide. Has 6 hours, 10 chapters of audio, as well as all of your Microsoft Excel tools, which are updated regularly. You send out emails that say, okay, I did this, I fixed this, right? If you have feedback, always give it to James. People DM me and they say, can I do this sort of thing? Can just anything about the tools, just James, you take care of it, right?
I will also give a quick note on the sport tickets. It's harder for me to hit them on the weekends. So if I'm a little bit slower on the weekends and I get back Monday morning, just deal with me. All right.
Right. A lot of times it's user error. A lot of times is you didn't cut and paste the column in the right spot.
The biggest thing that I have found that people have made a mistake on is simply not matching the column formatting.
Right. Well, that's what if you don't match the column format, it won't work.
Right.
Because I've done it by mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done it by I think yesterday I put it in a portfolio correlate. I was doing portfolio trimmer, and I accidentally cut and paste the salary in the wrong spot.
Yep.
And then why doesn't this work? And so I just double check and I go, okay. Yep. Like worst case scenario, if you can't see it right then, just close out the document and start over again, right? And then you go, okay, I didn't paste. Oh, okay, whoops, right?
Whoops.
right? Or sometimes you cut and paste in the like even with the lineups, like uploading the DraftKings. Like yesterday I had to spend extra time because I cut and paste the lineups from the portfolio trimmer over the entry feed, like the entry column.
Yeah, I've done that
For DraftKings. So it's like, and then I before I went to upload, I realized what I did. I'm like, I had to cut and paste and put it in, and then because then obviously DraftKings will say these don't match any entry IDs because you've written over them, right? So yeah, so a lot, most of the time it's user error, or what you're trying to do, truthfully, is past the power of what Excel could do.
Yeah, I had.
Let's just say the portfolio correlation matrix will not work with like 6,000 lineups that are highly diverse. It will literally give you a debug error.
Yeah, because it will literally go through and it'll just break. There are certain things that the tools just can't do.
Right, to that extent, or if I'm gonna, like what you said, I'm gonna make 2 million lineups and then simulate like dude, this is not built for what Excel could do. There's a reason why you only put in 10 lineups to simulate.
Right. And people have asked me if they're like, well, why does it only do 10 lineups? I'm like, look, you could feasibly do 150 in this. You could. I wasn't gonna do it, but you could because the amount of time and energy to put into doing that is not worth your time or energy.
Right.
10 lineups is fine. If you want to like make some decisions for single entry or 3 max, like cool, good. But you don't, there are certain things that like, if you push the bounds, there's diminishing returns on why you're doing this thing.
Right. It's not useful enough for 150. It's not.
No.
For what you're doing. Because every lineup that you add to that makes it exponentially longer.
Right.
Right. So it's not the type of thing of like, well, why can't you make it 20? Well, 20 will take like 10 times as long as 10. Like 2 lineups takes X amount of time. 3 lineups takes the cube of that. Like it's not just something. Now it looks very fast to you. I mean, it goes like that.
It's fast.
But that's the whole point. You don't want to make it so that you put in 100 lineups and you press it and then you go and get yourself a snack and wait for it to be done, because this is supposed to be you're building lineups a half an hour before lock.
Yeah. Right.
You're deciding on this 10 minutes, 5 minutes before you're submitting, and you're going, which one of these 10 I have to make a decision on that. Like that's the purpose of the tool. If you take the course theoryofdfs.com, you will understand that the more and more you understand the concepts of DFS, the less and less time that it should be taking for you to build lineups. Okay, so you should be able to tonight, even if you didn't know anything about NFL football, build 20 showdown lineups that were plus EV.
Oh yeah. Oh
yeah. If you have projections and you have ownership and you have a lineup builder and you have these tools, there's no reason why you couldn't. I could play the baseball slate tonight. I have no idea who's pitching or know anything. As long as I have that information and I have these tools, I can play any contest I want. If I want to play the 121 single entry on DraftKings, sure. Yeah, just
easy.
Plug some stuff in and I could do all of this in, I mean, depending on the slate, probably less than 10 minutes.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that especially in something that doesn't require a lot of groups. I mean, NBA.
Yeah, NBA is going to be easy as hell. It's easy as hell in relation, but of course, updating the projections at 6:38, this guy's out. At 6:52, and like it's like 12 minutes before lock. Got to update all the projections. Like that's going to be more of the scramble, but the actual building of lineups, like with these tools now, with lineup HQ, right? So you need RotoGrinders, NBA projections, lineup HQ to build the lineups, and the theory of DFS tools. Like, dude, like I'm going to be building lineup. It's going to be like, okay, 4 minutes, I'm done.
Yep, it's going to be really easy for NBA. For like PGA, I imagine these tools would be just killer for PGA. No correlations to worry about.
Right, no nothing to worry about.
Like all that you have to do is do the same process that you did for NFL. Go through the correlation matrix, figure out what the correlations are, go in, build a couple groups to avoid those combinations, throw it into the trimmer. 10 minutes at most. And it's a weekly thing. It's so easy.
Right. Then you check your dupes afterwards for showdown, and you have the dupe checker also. You have the dupe predictor, right? So for like the showdown stuff, you just add one more tool in there. So like I don't trim. See, James, for showdown, I don't trim until I dedupe.
Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah,
Some people were doing the other way around. Like in the Discord, in my Blenders Game Theory channel, they're like, "Oh, I would trim the portfolio and then put it in the dupe predictor, and my lineups would be too duped, so I had to go back." It's like, no, I don't trim until like I'm gonna build like 1,200 lineups.
Yeah,
put them in the dupe predictor, and then get rid of like 80% of those lineups. And then on the last ones, then I trim.
I'm considering, because I'm going to do another batch of updates and stuff like that. And with the duplication predictor, I might be adding in a button to automatically trim to a certain threshold of duplications in your portfolio. Because I think that would be, because I do that anyway. So I think that's just an intuitive thing that we might as well add. But yeah,
instead of just cutting and just clearing out those cells.
I just build five. Like I said, for my showdown optimizer, I build 5,000 lineups. I see what they look like. I throw them into the dupe checker. I cut out anything that's over 20 dupes, and then I throw it into the trimmer. And that's it. It takes no time.
Strawface 23. Are there correlations in golf? No, that's not the correlations James was talking about correlations between popular lineups.
Right.
My suggestion, Strawface 23, would be to go to theoryofdfs.com/advanced and get the course and listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's almost weird. James, it's extremely weird that how you could learn from something that's designed to teach you.
Yeah, and teach you really, really well. You do a really good job in it, by the way.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you did a good job.
Right. That's at theoryofdfs.com. James, you're always at paydirt_DFS on Twitter. And we got showdown tonight. I'm very busy today. We got baseball later today. So there'll be a Grinders Live. I'll be on the pre-lock show for showdown tonight with Will, Chief Justice, for the Russell Wilson goes back to Seattle for the first time since last year. Right? It's Broncos, Seahawks. We'll be talking showdown then. And I'm here all week. Right? Give me those thummy thumbs on your way out the door. That always helps us. This is a free show. If you want to keep it free, you got to give me those thummy thumbs. And we'll be talking about whatever. It's mostly NFL now. Obviously, Fridays we do MMA, but mostly NFL. Tuesday, we'll be breaking down some more stuff. I'll show tools, go over lineup HQ stuff, go over whatever you want. NFL, answer your DFS strategy questions. I'm here every day, pretty much, right? Every weekday, Monday through Friday, 11 o'clock Eastern on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.